and we will head on over into the next one for our snubs and dubs, and that will be achievement in costume design. Now this one,
Ooh.
I'm gonna kind of go with the weird choice. This is more about what I liked necessarily than knowing like how tough it was to do the costumes. But the choices were a complete unknown, Conclave, Gladiator 2, Nosferatu, and Wicked. And I would be incredibly surprised if this movie wins. I really don't think it's going to, but my choice would honestly be Gladiator 2. And I don't think I have a snub. I think the costumes in Doom Part 2 were really cool, but I don't necessarily like that's not what drew me into the movie, right? But I do remember when I was watching Gladiator Part 2 at the beginning, I did really like the costumes. And I remember sitting in theater thinking like, wow, those costumes look really good. And like that kind of pulled me into the movie for the fight scene. And then of course the rest of the movie didn't really hold me there because I'm not going to spoil it for you guys in case you wanted to see it. But I wish Gladiator 2, I wish the movie was as good as the costumes. I guess is what so I will give it the dub for achievement in costume design, and I don't really have a snub on this one. So my choice will be Gladiator 2. Like I said, if the movie was as good as the costumes, it would have been a much better movie.
Well, I'll pick up the Dune 2 praise for you, Will. That's definitely my snub here. I think it was incredibly impressive how they were able to keep such a um, like very consistent visual language with their costume designs, with so many different factions. You can tell at a glance who is a part of what. I felt like just based on the design of what they're wearing, and not just from color, which I thought was so impressive. A very muted palette when it comes to the wardrobe of a lot of the characters in the film, but a lot of it came from texture. Like the Fremen had like very clothy woven outer garments,
I'm
whereas like the still suits had almost like an organic like rib like designed over their chest, and like these tubes and pockets almost felt like they were like filled with like fluid. It felt very like an exoskeleton, like from the design. And I thought it was just so impressive how they could communicate a lot of those things just from the design. Honestly, though, of all the movies here, I don't think there's a single one I wouldn't mind winning, aside from maybe a complete unknown, just because
right.
I'm not really excited from a movie like set in like the 1960s or whatever, winning for costumes.
I'm like, what are your
Uh,
costumes in that one? Just clothes? Like, what's the costume? Like, what is this? So,
right.
okay.
But no, like Wicked, I thought the costumes are great. Everyone looked very magical in that movie. Like it felt like a stage play come to life. Nosferatu looked amazing. Count Orlok especially. Like everyone's drip in that movie was off the charts. Conclave, like the robes and the garments were so meticulous, but also like it really helped put you in the conclave itself. Like it helps you set where exactly you are. And so if I have to pick, I'd probably say conclave just off of a gut, but truly I don't think there's any that I would feel is really like shouldn't have won.
Let me ask about Wicked. Is it how like CGI are their costumes? Are there any part where their
Mm.
costumes are CGI, or is that more like production design?
I think when I'm looking back at the movie, I don't remember seeing any costume that was like, oh wow, that's CGI. It seemed like the effects were very practical.
Mm,
Like the green skin of
Yep.
Elphaba was very practically done. Like I think that was makeup. And I think when we get to that category, it'll probably be my win for that one because it looked completely natural that she was just green.
mm,
I think they also did a lot of physical sets as well, like
mm.
ones that you would be surprised. Like I was surprised to learn that, oh, they actually went through the effort of making this almost like Venice-like waterway, like pillars and archways and structures. Like that was
Wow.
an actual set. It was not just CG. So there was a lot of love in this production.
Yeah, a lot
Wow.
of
Okay.
practical effects.
That's really good to hear because I was just kind of envisioning watching two people in front of a green screen. So
Right.
okay. All right. Well, that's good to know. I think that Wicked will probably win. But
Mhm.
off of my gut, I was like, oh, Gladiator. I bet that one has a lot of talent put behind it. Just because, yeah, I think like the farther back the period piece you go, the harder it gets. There's less reference images and more room for like creativity and accurate creativity, I guess. And
Mhm.
just looking at some of these images here, it's like the costumes are very deep and like looks like a huge part of like the cinematography and like you said, Will, like the movie if it was as good as the costumes. So yeah, when instantly looking at these, I was like, I bet, yeah, Gladiator 2 probably has great costume design. But I probably think Wicked will win.
I pretty much agree with basically across the board everything y'all said. Maddie, I think you're right. I think Gladiator 2, costume wise, would be really impressive because of the period piece aspect, and also because they're trying to tie it back to. I don't know the difference in time between the first and the second in terms of like the timeline of the film's stories.
I think it takes place 20 years after the first one.
Okay, so it's not super long. So
Mhm.
kind of having to harken back to that, but also like making it its own thing at the same time. That just sounds like a really
Yeah.
interesting technological feat to do. And I also agree with what Ty said about Dune Part Two. So if I'm gonna give a snub, I'll do that, of course. But I just like the those and I'm talking about both parts as a whole here, but still, especially even just part two by itself, even the the uh the part of the reason why these movies are so easily digestible is because of the costume design, because and obviously because of the locations too. But like you know what the Atreides are wearing, you know what the Fremen wear, you know what the Harkonnens wear, you know what the Carrinos wear, and everything. So it's just I just really like that aspect of that. One thing that I thought interesting, and I don't know if this was just speculation, or hang on, I don't know if this was intentional or not. Costume design of Florence Pugh's character gives the same vibes as the childlike Empress in the Neverending Story with the white and the head wrap and everything.
Hmm.
And then in one of those movies, the actress who plays her in the third one is Julie Cox, and she also played Princess Irulan in the Dune sci-fi miniseries. So it's kind of connected in this weird
Weird.
roundabout way.
Oh.
Hmm. That was
I
pretty.
definitely
So I just
see
thought
it
that was
with
interesting.
the little head jewelry with
Yes,
like the teardrop.
and then just the all white dress and everything.
Yeah, and I'll have to amend my earlier statement when I said I don't have a snub. I think I just have to agree with you guys based upon the nominations. I don't think you can sit and you can't watch A Complete Unknown and then watch Dune Part 2 and then be like, yeah, A Complete Unknown had better costumes. And I think it's the one that deserves an Oscar nomination. There's no line of reasoning. Like anyone who did this, I would sit them down and be like, okay, watch this movie. Now watch this one. Now tell me which one has the better costumes. And don't lie to me because it's just people in the 90s. It's not even a period piece. It was 30 years ago. I still like I have clothes in my closet that could work in A Complete Unknown. So I don't there's no way it should be here and Dune Part 2 not be here. And I
Yeah,
feel like
how?
Right.
I think the only reason why I would still choose Gladiator 2 is because again, the costumes in Dune I think are better, but just
Hmm.
Dune Part 2, the costumes, they established that in the first Dune. A lot of those same costumes they brought back, and obviously those were all phenomenal. I think Gladiator 2 improved upon the costume design from its predecessor. Of course, its predecessor is 20 years old, so if it didn't improve, that would be really sad. But it did improve on its predecessor, so I will still keep it with Gladiator 2. But yeah, there's no way Dune Part 2 should not be here with A Complete Unknown being up here. That's
Mhm.
does not make any literal sense.
Yeah.